Hey everyone, Dockwell here, and welcome to another video. Today's video is going to be a mid-tier list for patch 7.34c, and just like every time, I look at all the stats and then I compile the list. It's mainly a pub list. It's kind of obviously based on pros and stuff like that, but it's mainly for pubs, and obviously it's somewhat my opinion as well. So let's just jump right into it with the S-tier hero in the mid lane. The first one is Pangolier, and it's kind of weird because this hero's been nerfed, I feel like, a lot. Like, over the last, 6 months or so, it's been nerfed a ton. At least since the 3.3 patch when they changed the map. I think that was when they maybe buffed the hero. But anyway, this hero's basically been, broken for so long. And it seems like they keep nerfing it here and there, a little bit here, a little bit there. And yet it's still just, broken. It's still very, very good. And it's still getting picked the most in the mid lane in high MMR pubs. It's just the most picked. And it still has a very good win rate. And I think the main reason is the kit is just too good. What it does, they changed this to be percentage, or from percentage, I think, to just being flat damage barrier, which makes it not nearly as good. You can't just use shield crash around 4 enemies and just never die, just be completely unkillable. But regardless, in the laning stage, it still does what you need to do. You can still use it and get a shield. You can still use it to secure last hits. And even if you're against a Viper in mid, yeah, that's not great, but you can still basically lane, get your last hits, and then you just rotate with this low cooldown ultimate that just secures you kills all the time. And then late game, once you get your items, you're a ridiculous team fight beast, and you can do insane damage, and you have this mobility, you have minus armor, you have the attack stuff. I think before, that's another thing, I think what is this, it does yeah, decreases their attack speed. When I said attack stuff, I mean they used to disarm, now it just decreases attack speed, which is kind of effectively the same thing. It's not as good, obviously, but it's still really good. And that's the thing, they keep nerfing all these aspects of the hero, and yet it's still insanely good. And so I think it's just one of those heroes, kind of like Ember. I mean, we're seeing Ember in the same way. No matter how much they nerf Ember, just the kit is fundamentally broken, it seems like. And I don't know, it's one of those things where, do they change the kit to make the hero less exciting? I don't think they should do that. Maybe just keep nerfing the numbers until it kind of goes away, and then eventually we'll bring it back with some buffs. I think that's kind of how it should happen. Don't change the hero fundamentally, especially with fun heroes like Ember, like Pangolier. Just keep nerfing it until it goes away, and then, eventually bring it back in a year or so. But that's just Pango. There's nothing really special to talk about. They've nerfed it a bunch, and yet it's still really, really popular. And I think it's basically just because this is one of those heroes that the laning stage, although you can secure it, the earlier part of the game is its weakest part, and you're just going to get farm. You're going to have space, and you can rotate and do all the things you need. You can play kind of any game with Pango. And you just counter so many different kinds of heroes, illusions, all these different kinds of things. There's so many different item builds you can go. It's just very versatile in that way. So anyway, that's Pango. I think mid is his best role, far and away. You can play offlane and some other stuff like that, but it's just not nearly as good. And then next we have Invoker. So Invoker recently got changed, and they kind of just mixed up all the different ways that not all of his skills. They kind of all work similar to how they did before, but they changed up all of his, I don't even know what you would call these elements that he uses, his abilities basically, that you actually put points into. So they changed all these three, what they give you, and a lot of people have been playing this hero support, and he's a very good support, but he's also a really good mid. And one of the reasons for that is not just how they changed the hero fundamentally, but also that you can just reliably get your farm from mid because the map is so big and games are going so long. This hero needs farm. It is good early, you can rotate and stuff if you're going the right build, but you obviously are really crazy late game with a bunch of items. This hero just owns late game. And so it's fairly reliable that you can get there. And then with the new way that this hero is played, you don't have to just go Midas and stuff and be just AFKing for 20, 30 minutes to actually get that. You can be active, but still get your items and still be very effective. There's a lot of things you can do with the hero. Now, I'm not an Invoker player. I really don't play the hero at all. It's one of the only heroes that I don't play at all, period. I don't play this or Meepo. I don't play a lot of micro heroes. So I don't know all the specifics. I can't give you every little detail about why Invoker's so much better when they changed it, all this stuff. I can't go into all those details. I've just been seeing it a lot more, and it feels very powerful. That's kind of the most I can say. I know how Invoker plays generally in the game, just because I've played against it, I've played with it, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of the specific actual numbers and all those things, I can't really give you too many details on that, unfortunately, because I'm not an Invoker player. It's just one of those things where I'm this far into Dota and I never touched Invoker. It's like the longer I go without playing the hero, the less likely I am to actually invest time to learn the hero. It's just one of those things. I'm not necessarily a mid player, and I'm just not going to learn it. I'm just kind of giving up that. I can play almost every other hero. Like even other heroes that I've have like very few games on. I've played Timbersaw on another account. Stuff like that. Like even Tinker, it's very low level here for me, but I played like a lot of Tinker on another account. I like spammed like hundreds of games or so on another account because I just like wanted to learn the hero, but I just never did that with Invoker for whatever reason. Anyway, moving on from Invoker, we have Queen of Pain. Now, this one actually is kind of interesting because I don't see a ton of it at my MMR for whatever reason, but it's just getting picked. Like it's like the second or third most picked mid hero, and I think it just has a lot of different, like it just can go these tanky builds. It can go different items, whether it needs to, go tankier, go more damage, go Orchid. It just depends what you want to get. The Ags is also really good. I think they may have nerfed the Ags recently, like a few patches ago, but it's still very, very good. And you kind of rush that second item. Almost in almost every case, you get that like second item or so. Maybe you go like a small item, BKB, and then Ags. But still, you're like getting Ags is the point. And then you get your Ags and your Shard, and you just have all these little ways of just being super annoying in fights. And you can just do a ton of damage on the hero. I also think that this Sonic Wave change was kind of good. It's like a little awkward because it's not just like burst damage, but it does damage over time as it pushes them back. I think that's just like better because it's not like, I'm pretty sure in the past, so let me just go on a little diatribe or a little tangent here. In the past, if you cast the ability and it like missed them, it could be really weird because it did like burst damage, and it like, if you missed the one instance, you could almost like walk into where you would feel like the ult would hit, and it wouldn't do any damage to you. It like you still missed. It was like really weird in that way. I don't know if you know what I mean when I say that. It's like you can, now that's obviously a skill issue too, like just don't miss lol. But there's a cast animation, all these different things. But now it still has the forced pushback, but it feels like it's a lot harder like for people to run away from it. Like even if they get clipped by it or they run into it afterwards, the damage and the pushback like keep happening. It's not just like you miss that burst and then you're like done. And I believe that's how it works. Maybe I'm just completely wrong about that. And in the past, even if you like ran into it at the very end of it, at like the point right in front of Queen of Pain, if you know what I mean, like let's say she's screaming and you're kind of running in front of her and the stream is already happening and it hits you like right in front of her face. I think in the past it wouldn't do anything, like it just missed. But now because it's like a series of damage, you'll still actually do damage. That's not that huge of a deal, I think, but it does feel like it's just like better because of all the like damage over time that she's doing and all this kind of stuff. I just think those multiple instances are better because it's doing the same damage. It's just not getting blocked by like one little block or whatever, like it's just better against like TA or something like that, for instance. I'm pretty sure it just like does those multiple instances, and that's almost always going to be better. It's like, imagine if I think Skywrath Mage is like a good example. What if Skywrath Mage's ult was just like, like Laguna Blade? That Laguna Blade and Finger are good, but if they just like did damage over time and the same damage, I feel like it'd be better. And the same thing with like Skywrath Mage. If it just did damage in one instance, that would kind of suck. But just like a ton of damage over like a bajillion instances. And that's just better. But anyway, not to talk about this hero too much and go into all these little details. Which I already did, but whatever. It just gets really tanky. Ags, Shard, all really good. The new ult is very good. It dominates mid. It reliably gets farm, all these different things. I think it just does everything that you want. And really, Queen of Pain is like, I would say it's the spirit hero. And not to jump ahead too much, but you can see like Ember, Puck, Lesh, like a lot of these spear heroes, and then like Storm and Void I have down here. You could arguably say that they're still pretty good, but they're just like worse than these other ones. And so they're just not as good. And so this is basically your spirit hero. Because these are kind of like, these are the spirit heroes basically, and Lesh is kind of maybe one, I guess you could say, but kind of. Not exactly, obviously, and Puck isn't one, but is basically one. And then Queen of Pain is sort of similar to a spirit hero as well. So that's why I kind of put them all in that category, because they're very similar. And so Queen of Pain is just like the best version of that. Mobility, magic damage, can scale late and get tanky, all that kind of stuff. So it's just the best version of that right now. So that's why it's in the S tier. And this is a lot based on the statistics. I'm actually not seeing a ton of Queen of Pain, like I said, and I think Pangolier is situational depending on if you're good as well. And then Invoker, I feel like people just spam this at every rank. So that's S tier. Next, we're going to move on to A tier. Zeus. pretty much just classic Zeus. There's really nothing more to say about that. I think it got heavily nerfed a while ago, and when they changed the shard, it just felt bad. But they've recently buffed it a few times. I think in the C patch they buffed it, and now it's just pretty good, and you're going to get reliable farm. Kind of like all these other heroes that, like, even if you don't have the best lane, which your lane is going to be fine, but, like, I guess after the laning stage, like mid-game-ish, you can get run at, and it can feel very awkward. Yes, you have your mobility now, but you're kind of squishy. You can get jumped on, all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't matter as much anymore because there's so much jungle, there's so many lanes to push out. I mean, there's still the same amount of lanes, but it just feels like the map is so much bigger that you're always going to be able to get a lane. You're always going to be able to get to that late game portion where you have so many items, you're doing insane damage, you're doing like the most damage on the team. It just feels like that can't be stopped because games go so long now. So I think Zeus is really good for that. Next is Earth Spirit. I think this hero is like on the up and up. I actually think this hero could potentially be like S tier. I just think the problem with it is that not enough people play Earth Spirit because it's just been so bad for so long. Like, I think it came out 10 years ago or something and it was busted. And I don't know that it's ever really returned into the meta. I mean, it was really good when there was more tri-lanes and it would be picked as like a 4 position. You could like roam on mid, but that hasn't been a thing for like 5 years or something. And so it's just been dead for, I feel like 5 years. And so people just don't play the hero that much. But if it's going to be good, which it's getting better, getting more buffs, and it's pretty good right now, I think it just needs to be good for a while for more people to play it. And then I think it's going to be like kind of broken. Like, actually, I think in my games, when I see a good Earth Spirit player, which happens sometimes, like, it just feels broken. Like, it feels like this hero just takes over the whole map. It can just be at every fight, and it just has like 1,000 rolls, 1,000 stuns. Like, it just does everything. It just literally does everything, and it's so hard to kill too. It has insane HP early. So if you know what you're doing and you're good at this hero, or you want to practice to get good at it, it's very good right now, and I think it could potentially be broken. I would say look for this hero to be very good at TI. Just look for that, because then obviously we have pros, we have players that are good with this hero. Just look for that. Now, obviously that might not happen, but I'm hoping it happens, like I said, because we haven't seen it for a very long time. Next, we have Primal Beast, another one of those heroes that kind of got nerfed a little bit because it was just kind of sitting in the background for a while and no one really touched it, even though it was still pretty good. And then people realized, like, oh wait, Primal Beast is actually good. And then they started playing it again, like, I don't know, a few months ago. And then people were like, oh wait, this is actually kind of broken. And then it was getting spammed or like picked a lot in the pro games. And then they recently nerfed it. So it's come down. I think before it was probably S tier, but now it's just come down a little bit, but it's still very, very good. Kunkka's the opposite. It's kind of on the upswing, sort of like Earth Spirit. And it's just like pretty solid right now. It's not getting picked a lot, but when it is, it has a very, very good win rate. In fact, I think on Dota 2 Pro Tracker, this is like the highest win rate hero, but it's just not picked nearly as much as these other mids. And so that's why I don't put it that high up there. I just put it in the A tier. We'll see if that trend like keeps going, and over the coming months or in TI, this hero maybe gets like to a higher echelon. I think this hero is pretty good. It has a reliable laning stage, very good teamfight ultimate. You can go like a tanky teamfight build. You can also go damage if you need to. There's a lot of things you can do with the hero. I think it's pretty good. I like Kunkka. It's a pretty fun hero as well. So I'm glad to see this hero back because I don't think it's been good for a very long time. Next, we have OD, kind of a weird hero. You can go like the Meteor Hammer build if you need to. You can also just go right-click build with like Midas and stuff. This is one of those heroes that it can be very annoying to play against. Thankfully, I don't see it a ton. It's not getting picked a ton, but when it is, if it's the right game, it kind of owns, especially with the new ags where it's like you just kind of like don't die if you go down to low health. It's kind of like an Aeon disc, but like better, obviously. And then your ultimate where you can cast it earlier on the fights, and then it just has like a debuff on people when they cast spells. It's pretty good and pretty helpful for you as well, which I think is the main thing that made this hero good. I also think the fact that the Meteor Hammer changed like whatever 6 months ago in the 3.3 patch or something, made it shorter. Maybe it was the patch even before the 3.3 patch. Made the channeling time shorter. That just helps the hero because you don't have to put as many points in Astral. And Astral, it's like kind of whatever. Like you just want those other abilities. You can get more right-click damage early on. And so you can go this Meme Hammer build. If you want to push all the towers, you don't have to put as many points in Astral. And then lastly, we have Huskar, kind of just like a cheese mid hero. I think it's pretty good overall. Not the best, not the worst, just a good cheese hero. You can have games where I think Necro, even though it's down here, Necro's getting like more popular. People are playing it more and more, so you just have to be careful about that. There's also some bad matchups. But if you get a good game with it, it can just like 1v9, honestly. But that's Huskar. Nothing really special to say about it. And next we have B tier. So these are all just like pretty solid heroes. In fact, some of these heroes you could say arguably deserve A tier, but here's a lot of like quirky, unique heroes that I think are on the upswing, or like Primal Beast a little bit on the downswing, but all these heroes that are just like not spirit heroes necessarily. Even though this is a spirit hero, it's kind of like different than these other ones, or not traditional. So I think these are just kind of better in some ways, where if you're going to pick, if you pick a B tier hero, you'd rather just pick the S tier, where this A tier has some differences between the S tier. It's not just like these are just fundamentally worse in every way. Like some matchups in some games, these heroes are going to be better than these ones, where pretty much in every case, these heroes are going to be worse than S. That's how I would probably frame it, I guess, because some of the win rates and some of the pick rates are similar. Like Ember Spirit is still getting spammed a lot. But his win rate's just relatively low because he's been nerfed so much, but he just still is reliable and good. Same thing with Puck. It's like very similar. The hero's getting picked a good amount because it's just like a reliable, good hero from the mid lane. You can secure rooms. You can secure your farm. You have good magic damage, good team fight earlier. You can also scale really well. Insane mobility, hard to catch. All the classic things that Puck does. Leshrac is kind of on the downtrend. It was like broken for a long time, then kind of got nerfed to disappear, but then like just came back and people were like, oh, well, oh, wow, it didn't really get nerfed as much as we thought. And now it's kind of finally, I think, on the downturn where I will be surprised, but I mean, it's possible I will just be surprised if it comes back during TI, but who knows? I mean, Quinn just like loves this hero, so that's mainly, he just like brings it back every time. Lena, I'm surprised, but this hero's actually getting picked a decent amount. People are playing the magic damage build. I don't think it's great, but it's decent. And so that's why it's up here. Really, that's the only reason. The old right-click like carry build is not really a thing anymore. It's more that magic damage build, and that can be very good if you know how to play. You just have to be used to it, know what you're doing, because you have to press your ability, only lasts for like 10 seconds. Kind of like a BKB. You have to know when to use it to get in to do the damage, and then you kind of retreat. It's a little bit all or nothing in that way. You still can do some right-click damage, obviously, but it's just not the same as like the carry where you're just kind of like this turret standing there and hitting. Then TA is a good carry / mid. It's just kind of one of these heroes that is sort of carry from the mid lane. And so if you want to play carry from the mid lane, you're going to get your farm, and you're going to be pretty good. You're going to reliably get your farm, but the reason why it's B tier is because picking a straight up carry in the mid lane sometimes can just straight up lose you the game. Now, obviously, this patch, it's pretty good because pretty much all 3 cores can just like free farm in a lot of MMRs and a lot of games. So if like you're mid to lower MMR, TA is a great carry from the mid, and you're going to you're going to stomp lanes even, and then have reliable farm. But sometimes you can just have bad matchups. You can get owned, and then you don't have as much space, and then you can just get run over. So that is a possibility when you're playing TA mid. Just keep that in mind. Earthshaker was pretty broken, I feel like, before they nerfed it a little bit. And this hero was getting played 4 position, 3 position, 1 position, or not 1 position, 2 position, sorry, mid. And it's just not as good. I think if I made this list for the B patch, not the C patch, it might be even S tier. This hero was one of the best heroes in the patch. It was getting picked like every single game, I swear. I saw it every game, at least from the offlane. It was really getting spammed offlane, but even mid players were playing this. It's still very good. I think it's still pretty reliable. It's not as good. Maybe in a few months we'll see it drop off completely, but people are still picking it and having some success. Keeper of the Light is the opposite of Earthshaker. It was bad for a long time. It's kind of on the upswing. It's gotten buffed a few times. Keeper of the Light core is coming back. It was popular maybe when 3.3 first came out, 7.33 first came out, but it was popular as a support to basically just buff up Medusa. I mean, that was literally all that it did. And now it's kind of coming back to being more of that mid magic damage annoying hero that it was maybe a year or so ago when it was a very, very popular mid. Not much has changed. It's just kind of gotten some buffs, and now it's like the numbers are overall just better than they were before. Lone Druid, I put here around the mid tier because I just don't know about the hero. Like sometimes I see it and it looks absolutely broken, and then sometimes I see it and it looks absolutely terrible. And not very many people play it, not very many people are picking it. Has a decent win rate, but like it's just really hard to know where this hero's at. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not a Lone Druid expert and I don't see very much of it, so it's very hard to judge other than just looking at the stats and my own experience with it. But keep in mind, because of the rare way that it plays and like the fact that it changed so much and that pro players are better at it than most other players, look for this hero to potentially become like A or S tier at TI. I actually think this hero could get picked a bunch at TI. Now, that's probably not going to happen because it almost never does get picked, but look out for that. It could be a possibility with these weird changes that somebody just realizes, oh wait, this hero is actually completely broken, and then it gets like first banned or first picked, that kind of stuff. So just look out for that. And then Arc Warden, just kind of middle of the pack. Can be very good if you're an Arc Warden player. You will reliably get your farm in a lot of games because of that, so I think it can potentially be good, but it's just at a very awkward spot. Not many people play it. It just feels weird, the different buffs and things that they've given it, but I think it is another one like Lone Druid where it's on the up and up, and you could just like wake up after a couple weeks and just, oh wait, this hero is getting spammed and it's actually like the best hero in the patch right now. That's definitely something that could happen with Arc Warden. Next we have C tier. All these heroes are like decent. Monkey King's just at a pretty good spot right now, just okay. He's definitely pickable from mid. He's kind of like a carry from the mid lane. You can definitely pick that these days. He can have some bad matchups because he's a melee hero. He's a better melee hero than some of the other ones, but so just be careful when you're picking him because, like I said, the matchups can be bad. And then if you have a really bad matchup, he doesn't like flash farm. You're really not going to buy Battle Fury from the mid lane, so it just feels bad. Maybe you buy a Maelstrom, but you'd rather buy like more tanky, aggressive items, and that just, if you have a bad lane, that's hard to do. Storm and Void, I'll just group them together because they're just kind of the worse spirit heroes than Ember or Puck and like obviously Queen of Pain. They're just, you can still pick them, don't get me wrong. I mean, Void Spirit isn't like absolute trash. He's gotten nerfed a ton. Storm is just kind of like always been not as good as Void or Ember. Like there was a couple patches ago where he was broken because of the weird talents or like the null talismans or whatever, but that was just like a weird quirk thing. He just always seems to be the worst of the three main spirits, but right now these are on par because Void has been nerfed so much and they're just decent. You can pick them, but just beware that they can have some bad games. Necro is one of these heroes that I feel like the lower the MMR you go, the better he is. I can just see him dominating some games even from the off lane as well. But then sometimes you can just absolutely own them if you know what you're doing. Like if you just buy Nullifier and some stuff, or if you have a lot of magic damage, like you have a Zeus or something else like that on the team, it can just feel like, oh, well, Necro just is food. So this hero almost seems like all or nothing. Sometimes it feels unkillable and you're just destroying people, doing insane damage, insane regens. Like, what do we even do? This Necro is just owning the game. And other times it feels like, oh, a Necro just doesn't exist. Then we just delete him in 1 second. And that's just kind of the difference between not just a good Necro player and a bad one. I don't necessarily think like this hero's not that hard. It's just like it's completely matchup dependent, game dependent, and obviously there is some skill involved. Don't get me wrong, but it just feels like it's very hard to get the best game. But if you're playing it mid, at least you can see 4 heroes before you actually pick it. So in that way, it can be pretty good. Timbersaul's been nerfed a lot, so that's why it's all the way down here. It feels like just fundamentally, though, unless they just keep nerfing the hero, this is kind of where it's going to stay. It only is going to kind of get up, go up from here because it's not going to get nerfed more, I don't think. I just don't see it getting nerfed more. I don't see it getting picked a ton in TI, but hey, maybe it's still good. Maybe it just has the Pango treatment where like this hero, maybe it's not getting picked a bunch in pubs, but come around TI and they're just like, wait, this hero is actually still really good and just does everything we want reliably from the mid and the off lane. Now, the thing is, I think it would be better as an off lane, maybe, not as much a mid, because usually it only plays mid when it's like really broken, and so that's why it's lower down on this list, but still, I don't think it's getting nerfed more, so this is kind of the lowest it's going to go for now. Sniper I actually put here because even though I could put him in D tier, I think he's generally reliable, especially in pubs. And I think he's just like better in pubs the lower you go, so that's why I'm putting him C tier. I think he's definitely viable, even though he potentially could be in D tier, but I think the stats pretty much just say that once you get to higher MMR, he's just worse, and so that's why I'm putting him here. Like, if you're in 1K, he's potentially like B or A tier. If you're in like, 10K, he's like F tier. So it's just, that's the difference of snipers. That's why I'm putting him C tier. Razor, better as a carry, better as an off lane. Potential that you could play him mid, but that's why I'm putting him down here, because he's pretty good right now, just not really as a mid. Visage, don't really play the hero much. It's definitely viable. I've seen a couple people pick it. Seems okay. Seems like more of an off lane for a long time now, though. And then Tinker actually was really good for a while, but I think this hero's just fallen off. They keep trying to change it to make it worse. Now, if you're a really good Tinker spammer and you're like smurfing, yes, sure, it's very good. It can still be very, very good, but I think there's a lot more ways to deal with it. It doesn't love playing against an Invoker. There's a lot of these heroes that can find him in the trees with his blinks and all that kind of stuff, or stun him through BKB. He just doesn't love all those kinds of things. So, again, if you're a Tinker spammer and a smurf, yes, you can play him, but don't smurf, obviously. That sucks. But it's just okay, where before it felt like it was broken. I really don't see this hero that much anymore. And then lastly, for viable heroes, we have D tier. Batrider's like semi-viable. The hero feels very bad. Has a very bad win rate, but you can kind of pick him from mid. That's really the only core position that he's viable in. He's not viable as off lane. He's actually more of a support, it feels like, recently, like more of a 4 position or something. So I think he might be like C or B tier or 4 position, but right now just mid. He's just okay, just not great. Shadow Fiend is just like a worse sniper. It feels like, I don't know. This hero feels very awkward. It just feels like it doesn't do anything better than a lot of other heroes. Like there's just so many things. There's so many heroes that do any one thing better than Shadow Fiend. I mean, the only viable way to play this hero, I think, is just like go the no raise build and just do insane right click damage. But that just feels cheesy and not great, especially because so many other people get their farm. Like, whatever, who cares? You're 20 minutes, you're doing a lot of damage, but you eventually fall off, and it just doesn't feel great. Death Prophet, I don't know. It just kind of at an awkward spot. It was strong for a very long time, got nerfed a bunch, and just is like okay. I think the ultimate also is like not good enough to warrant such a long cooldown. And this here's all about the ultimate. And that's, I think, the big thing. Wind Ranger just kind of in the dumpster. Been in the dumpster for a while now. Ever since they nerfed Universal Heroes, it's kind of disappeared. It was probably the hardest hit, that or like Magnus, I think. I mean, obviously Magnus is over here, so that's probably Magnus was the hardest hit. But Void's still semi-viable. Wind Ranger not viable at all. Clinks, not really. I mean, could be a core, kind of was a core when it was broken, but not really a core anymore, especially not mid or carry. It's like if you're going to play it, you probably play it support, and even then it's like, not great. DK, dead for a while now. It feels like, for some reason, this hero feels like it could be decent. Like, later into the game, if you get your items, it can be okay, and you definitely do reliably get your items, but for whatever reason, it feels like that's not good enough. Like, yes, you have your ags and stuff, but I don't know what it is, if they recently nerfed the ags, like, a while ago or something. I don't think it was recent, maybe like a year or so ago they nerfed the ags or something, but it just really feels like even if you get the ags, it's not enough. Like, yeah, you can fly away over the high ground, and yes, you have good magic resistance and all this stuff, but I don't know, it just feels like everyone else is getting their items too, and that's not, DK doesn't really do great with that. Like, yes, you're going to go this like Manta build with Octarine and blah 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 and your permanent dragon, but it's like, who cares? I don't know. It feels like you just tickle people. Yeah, you're slowing guys, but like, are you really doing damage? Are you buying Daedalus? I don't know. It just doesn't feel great. Pudge, fun to play. Can still like snowball games, but it's like a worse Necro in the sense that Necro's all or nothing. Pudge is kind of like that too. If you're snowballing the game and you're just owning people, getting a lot of hooks mid and killing the mid, sure, this hero can be very good. Then sometimes you can have this core Pudge and it feels like a support. That's really what it can feel like. Viper, too, like slow. It's not necessarily slow for, you know, the game in terms of it doesn't farm fast. Like, this hero doesn't farm fast either, and it also doesn't have very good movement speed, but just feels like you don't care as an enemy against the Viper if you just like can leave the lane and jungle. I think that's really what it is. Like, the hero's slow in terms of walking around. It's slow in terms of farming. Like, yes, you can farm, but you're really not that scary later once you get items. Like, you have a timing that's kind of earlier in the game. And since the game can go so late, like, once it gets past 30 minutes, like, you really don't care that much about a Viper. And him just, like, owning mid doesn't really matter because a lot of these heroes can just go jungle. Like, they just can stop you from taking their tower by defending the tower and then just go jungle. And you're just like, who cares if there's a Viper mid? Tiny was like F tier as a mid. You're never seeing this hero. It's still playable. That's why it's here. The win rate isn't as bad as it used to be. I think it got a little bit buffed recently. I don't even know. Maybe it just wasn't touched. Other things were nerfed, so it kind of went from F tier back to here, but it's still not really viable. Nobody's picking this. And then Meepo got like Giga nerfed. I didn't think the nerfs were that bad, but it just fell off a cliff. Like, the hero still has a decent win rate for people that pick it, but it's not getting spammed nearly as much as it used to be. It was in a lot of games before. It was becoming a semi-viable hero, and now it's just like gone. Then lastly, we have a lot of heroes that either are not mids or not good this patch. Snapfire, not a core anymore. Just got nerfed into Oblivion. Winter Wyvern, not a core since they nerfed Universal. Same thing with Magnus. Pugna, more of a support. They're trying to make this hero a core. I would love to see this hero come back mid, but it's just not good as a mid right now. Not an Alchemist patch at all. Everyone else is getting their farm, and your like farm timing is still, I mean, it doesn't even feel like Alchemist is an Alchemist anymore. Like, it doesn't feel like he gets more farm than everyone else on the map nearly as much as it used to, because they nerfed his Greevil's Greed pretty heavily now that it's like a free ability. So you really don't even feel like you get that much gold compared to some other heroes, and you still have to be ahead because your hero has such bad stats. So it's just overall, this hero's trash. Magnus, already said, similar to like Winter Wyvern, not very good anymore because of Universal nerf. Nyx Assassin's not a core. You can just play this hero as a support. It's very good as a support. It's just not as broken as it was, so it can't be a core. Omni, you could play it off lane as a core, not mid. I just don't think it's a mid. Tusk, you could potentially play mid if you're good with it, but the win rate is absolutely abysmal, and I don't think it's that great. You also don't farm quickly, where it's like you want a hero that can farm. Even if they do fight, like Pangolier, you can still get your farm. That's the thing. This hero just does not farm very well. And then Gyro, just a carry. It's just a carry. Like, yes, this is a carry mid, potentially, where you could like pick mid and farm, but it's just doing that too much. And then you don't really want to go the like magic damage build from mid. So it just feels awkward because you don't want to do either thing. Just pick it as carry and that's it. Maybe you could pick it as a 4 and do the magic damage build. And that's the thing. If you're going to go the magic damage build, you would just rather have it as a 4 position. So anyway, that's Gyro. Just don't pick it from the mid lane. And that is my mid tier list for patch 7.34c. As always, guys, let me know in the comments what you think. If you agree, disagree, what have you. Like, comment, subscribe, all of those kinds of things. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.